Hey everybody. I have a theme going on in my videos. So this is from the scene from the movie Children of Men. I don't know if any of you guys have ever seen it, but I'm going to play this scene and then I'm going to play you another little video.
Okay, Keith. I'm going to put my coat underneath. It'll be cleaner. You're okay. Okay? There's water. I'm just going to wash my hands. Yeah, I'm here. It's okay. Everything's okay.
Do something!
It's looking good, Keith. It's looking good. You're doing great. Just keep breathing. Keep breathing.
I'm breathing.
No, like Miriam said, do you remember? Breathe out. Just think about the out. Just breathe out and push. Push as well. That's it. That's it. Yes, you can. You can. Just out and push. Out and push. That's it. That's it. Keith, I can see the head. I can see the head. You're doing great. You're doing great, Keith. That's it. That's it. It's coming again. Just breathe out and push. Out and push. That's it. Out and you can. Yes, you can. Yes, you fucking can. Come on. Keith, the head's coming out. That's it. You're nearly there. You're nearly there. Just push. Push, Keith. Push. Push. That's...
How is he?
It's a girl. Key, you've got a girl.
She had a girl. Really important. All right, now we're going to play this.
Imposed in 1979, China's one-child policy devastated generations of families over its 35 years in effect. To enforce the strict population control measures, countless children were abducted or killed, women were subjected to forced abortions and sterilizations, and millions of girls disappeared before the Communist Party finally ended the policy in 2015. In the documentary One Child Nation, out now in select theaters and later this year on Amazon, director Nanfu Wang revisits her experience growing up in rural China in the late 80s and 90s. The film is at once a deeply personal portrait of family life under the one-child regime and a searing exposé of its draconian horrors. One Child Nation won the Grand Jury Prize at this year's Sundance Film Festival and has earned rave reviews from critics. In it, Wang interviews both the victims and the officials responsible for enforcing the one-child policy, revealing the true devastation it wrought on all Chinese citizens, including her own family.
The government would have police, family planning officials go door to door. They monitor women's period. They register whenever a woman had one child already, and then a month after the birth, the woman would be taken into clinics for forced sterilization. And in some cases, women would hide to try to carry another baby. And if they were discovered, no matter how far along this pregnancy was, they would be forced to have an abortion.
And so even in the case where a woman had a child and planned on not having a second child, they would still force her to be sterilized?
Yes. So in my family, I was born and I was the first child. And after I was born, the government wanted to sterilize my mom. And my grandpa, he fought against the government. And eventually, my family was allowed to have a second child. My mom was about to go into labor. And my grandma put a basket in front of her bedroom and said, if this baby is a girl, we would put her in the basket and abandon her right away. And luckily, my mom gave birth to a boy. So instead, that night, the family lit up firecrackers and celebrated.
You interview the midwife who actually delivered you, and she estimates that she's conducted somewhere between 50 and 60,000 forced abortions and sterilizations. So what is the overall scale? Like, how many people did this affect during its 35-year reign?
The government didn't estimate when they tried to brag about its success. It said that the government successfully prevented 400 million babies from being born. Since before I could even speak, I was surrounded by messages praising the policy.
Propaganda touting the policy's success is woven into every aspect of Chinese citizens' everyday lives, from cartoons and movies to slogans printed on cups and matchboxes. Wang seeks to counter this messaging and expose its true impact on Chinese society. The country's population is aging, and it faces a shortage of young workers, forcing even the Communist Party to relent 4 years ago and enact a two-child policy. But the party can't erase the damage that's already been done, particularly to generations of girls. Today, there's something on the order of 30 million more men than women in China, right?
Yeah, China has been a patriarchal society for thousands of years. So a lot of families would keep having babies, and when they had a daughter, they would choose to abandon this daughter or give away this daughter in the hope that the next one would be a son.
It would be common to just see abandoned children on the roadside and in markets and public places, right?
Yeah, my own uncle, when he had a daughter, his mom threatened to commit suicide if he was going to keep this baby. So he was forced to leave this baby in the market. 我咪玩苦了好久啊，你時間你送你先。
Yeah, but我睇完到你，我話眼你不得趕，放到你。
The guy does not look
And he was
remorseful
hoping that
at
someone
all.
else would see this baby and adopt her.
Looks
But
like a
at the time, no
sociopath.
one wanted a girl. So she eventually died because of sun exposure, because of hunger, because of being outside for days.
我話打定個隻好到點樣到冇，我曉得講我堅持。
My aunt, she didn't want to
Jeez.
see her daughter
He looks
die
like
that
he's
way. And she believed that the best way was to actually give her daughter to a human trafficker and hoping that this
Good
human trafficker
grief.
would find a home for her daughter and
be
would
raped
allow
and
her to
probably
survive.
eaten later.
Until this day, she doesn't know where her daughter is and whether she's alive or not.
像你还有你家是在全国做这个做的最
Wang's aunt was far from alone in being forced to give up.
I mean, this is pushed on these people culturally, propaganda, but they're right out in their face saying this stuff. In our country, they're covertly doing something to people. It's been going on for a long time. I've talked about it. Even the birth control out there, actually, a lot of people are not able to, once they go off, to actually have kids.
The girl in order to save her. Human traffickers would sell these children to orphanages that would arrange
disgusting
international
way. This
adoptions
country's more
worth tens of
honest.
thousands of dollars. And less than a decade
Horrible,
ago,
right?
a major scandal rocked the international media. The government itself had been turning a profit by abducting children to sell into the black market.
抱走了那么多的小孩子。
Local governments would allow a woman to carry the baby to full term and give birth. And then they would go into the family and take the baby away from the family by saying that they violated the one-child policy. Then the government would put this baby into...
And then you hear about here with the CT. I've used that expression for something else. Well, where they can come in and take your kids because of a certain thing that you don't want. This
for
forcing,
adoption.
taking,
and so
doing...
a lot of the adopted community outside of China
Communism.
believe that they have adopted an orphan, but in fact, these children are not orphans. They were not abandoned by their birth families.
And in some cases, like human traffickers, you would call them matchmakers, right? Because they would actually rescue a lot of these abandoned children. So what is your takeaway from that? Like, were these people really evil, or was it a necessary evil? Were they doing good, or what's your view on that?
Eventually, I met a very well-known human trafficker because he and his family had been sending babies to orphanages in a large area for years. And when the scandal about international adoption broke, he and his family all were sentenced from 10 years to 20 years for human trafficking. And these are people who in the news are reported as criminals. But when I met them, it became clear that they were hired by the state-owned orphanage and by the government. And they got paid through the government for bringing baby into the orphanage for adoption. And when the scandal happened, they became the scapegoat.
Now, a lot of these children who were adopted into families that thought that they were orphans.
I just had a weird thought. Now, I don't even know how to express it because of all the censoring, whatever. Anyway, what if the two countries are in bed together? I mean, we already know that they are, but what if they are and they're bringing the kids over here for certain things? Starts with an A.
Are being able to find their biological families through DNA testing, and a lot of them don't want to even know who their families are because they consider them to have abandoned them, right? What would you say to those people, and do you think that they should blame their biological families for having given them up?
I think it's really complicated, especially if what they believe that their identity is different from what the reality is. It's really difficult to face that reality. I think every parent would be heartbroken if they knew that their own child didn't want to know them, didn't want to connect with them. And I
don't think
all
I'd
the
want to
parents
connect
in China,
either.
No matter under what circumstance
abandoned me. I
that
don't
they
think so.
are separated from
Even if it
their
was
children, they all
coerced.
missed them. They all wanted to see them or wanted to know that they are okay.
You interview not only the victims, but also the perpetrators of these atrocities on behalf of the one-child policy. And you interviewed sort of the head of the village officials who tried to sterilize your mother after you were born. Your grandmother was in favor of letting this happen. Looking back on this, how much personal responsibility do you think that your grandmother or your family members in these situations have, even the government officials, given that they were, just following orders?
After I met with the village chief,
Just
the
following
midwife,
orders.
and a lot of officials, I realized that
That's always the
those
excuse,
people
isn't
were
it?
all nice people, and they struggled with their own morality and believed that they did something wrong, but also they had to do it because it was the national policy and they had to follow the orders. It was for the greater good of humankind, for the entire earth, for the
That's what they're
planet, for the
saying
nation.
here too. Okay, where does it end? It's for the greater good. It's not.
So
for
it was
these
then I realized that
sociopaths.
these people are also victims, and there is no perpetrators versus
Don't you just want to
victims.
hit something?
Every one of them was the victim of the policy. And
Sure, of
from
course they
there,
are.
I felt like I had enormous empathy
Stop
towards
acquiescing.
them.
Do you think that there's a limit to that excuse, that you're just following orders? And where
Exactly.
does personal responsibility come in and personal choice when there's this massive state that is threatening your own family if you don't do this?
When I was making this film, I often question myself, what would I do if I were in their position? And
Well, they'll
I
kill
don't
you or they'll put you in
have
prison.
the 100%
Sure, those
of
would be-
confidence saying
it's awful.
I wouldn't do
This
the
world
same
is
thing.
sick.
And I remember before I came to the United States, I worked in China, and at some point I even wrote propaganda for the organization, for the university that I work. I aspired to be a good worker, someone who is useful for the society. And when you live in that environment where the government told you to be a good person is to work harder for your government, then you believe in that. There is no other channel for you to get different information. So I really felt all the people who supported
get
the
so
policy
excited. It's
was
like, I wanna
not
say
because
something.
that they couldn't reflect, is because that they were never encouraged to reflect, to examine, and to have their own opinion.
And in the film, you talk about how the propaganda was pervasive. It was on everyday food items.
Okay, so what's the difference between this and Agenda 21? It's just wrapped in a different bow, is all it is.
Signs all over the place. Can you just talk a
Constantly
little bit about
bombarding you
that
with that.
machinery and how they employed it to such great effect?
Yeah, it's the propaganda is in every aspect of your life.
Yep.
There were
Here too.
songs written about one child is best. There are theater performances,
jab.
there are movies about it, stand-up comedy about it. You laugh at people who have more than one child. It just became part of
You
normal
didn't get
life.
it.
Like the air, the water, the tree that's there, you never question why it's there. And you thought that was just what the normal thing is. And I remember my friend told me that when she arrived in the US, and it was the first time that she saw people have siblings and it's a normal thing. And she realized that then the one-child policy wasn't normal.
The effect of all this
siblings are good,
indoctrination
though.
over-
Even though families can be dysfunctional, it teaches you to share. It teaches you compassion, empathy, getting along. It's such a great way to build social skills. I mean, it causes problems too,
that
but you know,
today even members of your family are still adamantly in
is
support
good,
of
even
the
if
one-child
it's
policy,
problematic.
right? So how do they justify that? What do they see as being so important about it?
So my mom, until this day, she still believes that the one-child policy was necessary. And she represents the majority of people in China who believe that the one-child policy helped China's economic growth and also helped them survive starvation. And it just showed me how effective the propaganda has been, because
and there's no reason for these people to starve while their leaders are all getting fat, eating whatever, and these people are living on rice and broth, basically, and veggies. I say this all the time. It's just about greed. It's all it is.
the main
Greed and
narrative that
Luciferianism.
the government had always tried
their
to
star. They
make
have the
people believe through
pentagram star,
textbooks,
basically.
through media, through the news.
And population alarmism
Dragon,
has existed for a long time in a lot of different countries and contexts. We see this today sometimes, suggestions based on climate change. Do you think that there's ever a risk great enough that this type of centralized population control would be necessary or could happen in the future?
A lot of the governments internationally, they are even like talking about, we should follow China's example and start our own one-child policy. And I think that's really alarming.
Or start a cult like in that movie Midsommar and just have people by the time they're a certain age have to jump off a cliff. I mean, it's everything. Just kill yourself. Just kill yourself.
And
be a Dr.
understand
Kevorkian.
the consequences
Holy.
of a government taking away the choices.
Let's make their
from
life so
women,
miserable
from
that they want to kill
individuals.
themselves,
What the human cost would
That's
be.
another way to increase ending things for people. I mean, it breaks my heart. We got to pray. And the only thing I can, we need Jesus bad. All right. Well, I love you guys. I'll post a link to these videos, but it's heartbreaking. And that's what they want here too. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.